Welcome to this episode of the We Travel There podcast. We're with Ben Camille of TravelDefend.com to ask if travel insurance is worth it. Ben runs a boutique travel insurance agency, and he shares us insider tips to help our listeners protect their trips from delays, cancellations, illness, and injury. In this episode, Ben and I compare single trip versus annual travel insurance, how travel insurance compares to credit card benefits, and what type of exclusions listeners need to be aware of. Hear about these three important topics, plus so much more. If you know someone who is concerned about unexpected problems while traveling, I'd love it if you share this episode with them. The show notes are available at wetravelthere.com/travel insurance. Now let's get started. The We Travel There podcast helps you travel like a local by interviewing guests from around the world to uncover the hidden gems of their city by finding out the best things to do, eat, drink, and see from a local's point of view. Using airline miles and hotel points makes travel affordable, but keeping track of all those loyalty programs can be a challenge. That's why I use AwardWallet to track my miles and points balances, reservations, and special goodies like free hotel night certificates and airline companion passes. Having everything in one easy-to-use dashboard helps ensure that I don't lose any rewards and makes logging into my accounts super easy. Go to wetravelthere.com/AwardWallet to start your free account. Hey, Ben, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Today, we're talking about travel insurance, and I know I'm taking a lot of international trips this year, going to Spain and Paris and England and everything else. And I know that for a lot of people, when they're booking these trips, it ends up being a lot of money. And most of us, if something goes wrong, we don't have the extra money to cover it in case like we have an emergency and we need to be able to get home and everything like that. So travel insurance is one of those things that helps protect us and the investment that we've made in this journey of a lifetime, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about like what travel insurance is and like how you got started in this area?
Sure. So travel insurance is very important, okay? I think that once people understand it and they start getting into it, they realize how crucial it is. But basically, travel insurance has a number of different things that it'll cover. Number one, let's say you're going on an expensive trip. You want the trip cost to be covered. God forbid something happens. Sickness, injury, COVID, accident, weather issue, airline issue, maybe a family member has an issue. I mean, we can go on and on. There's many, many covered reasons if you get the correct policy. But the point is, what if you have 10 grand on the line, 50 grand on the line? We do many luxury tours. We have thousands of clients, upwards of 100,000 to 300,000. I mean, this is common for us. Not that we don't do all price points. We can and we do. But the point is, number one, tremendous amount of money on the line. That's really where I think most listeners would really be very focused on travel insurance. Make sure you're protecting your investment in terms of the tour. Also very important is assuming you do go on the trip, all the medical coverage there. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't think about. In most cases, I would say a solid 99% of the time, whatever health insurance you have at home is not going to cover you on a trip. Okay, even though people think, in many cases, they think it will, but it doesn't. Okay, they're like either their health insurance at home is secondary coverage or it has emergency coverage, which sounds great. Oh, emergency coverage, but really emergency coverage may say, well, we'll only cover you for what we deem to be an emergency, which is not your broken leg, et cetera. So point is, medical, very important to have primary coverage, not secondary coverage. Again, we'll get very into this for any listeners that really want to be educated in travel insurance because the ignorance that exists around it is shocking. Also, it has all the ancillary stuff, trip delay, baggage loss. But basically, I'll tell you very quickly, how we got started in this. I used to run luxury tours for almost 20 years. Coming out of COVID, I knew that nobody was going to book these trips without travel insurance. I mean, we had clients that were spending $1, $2, like I told you, $300,000-$400,000 on this trip. And I knew how crucial it was. And just the type of business owner that I am, I get very obsessed with things. And I'm not just going to say, okay, well, figure it out on your own or just guide them to somewhere where I don't know how they're actually going to get paid. So I started fostering these relationships, really diving into the world of travel insurance. And I started to realize, I was like, you know what? Who's actually paying these bills? How do we know that I'm recommending something to my clients that they're actually going to get paid? So as I kind of went down that rabbit hole and really became just focused on this, the policies and the depth there, I started realizing that, this is actually a better business than tours. We started helping all the tours in our niche. And then we started literally at this point, we have thousands and thousands of clients. We have hundreds of tour operators, travel agents that we work with as feeders to us. And so the point is, now we're really a concierge service in the sense where most people, either you need to buy a policy, you go to a website like Allianz, you got one or two options that they offer you, or you go to a like Squaremouth, which is like, Expedia type website where there's 100 options. The ignorance that surrounds travel insurance is tremendous. People have no clue what they're buying. More importantly, they don't know what to do if they actually have a problem in real life. And so that's where we created Travel Defend, where we're experts in every policy that exists in America. Someone calls us, reaches out to us, we'll guide them, get them the correct policy, we'll do the paperwork for them. Most importantly, this is really most important, we'll make sure they get paid in real life. We'll make sure they're medically protected. Because at this point, we bring millions of dollars to these insurance companies. We have tremendous power there. Many times we have our own dedicated claims analysts at these companies. So, and by the way, we don't add a penny to the cost. So there's no reason ever not to use us. So there literally has never been one client ever that finds out about us and will always use us forever. There's no reason to buy on your own. You're really faceless to these companies. Very hard to navigate these waters. So that's the basic gist of who we are and what travel insurance is.
Obviously, a lot to unpack here. We talked about a lot there at the beginning here. Let's break it down a little bit more so that way the people who are listening can understand what travel insurance is, how it can protect them, and what type of trips it would actually cover for them. So, like, I know I've researched prices online for, a lot of different travel insurance policies. And sometimes I'm like, it's worth it. Sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure. And then it ends up being one of those things where if the value proposition isn't there, sometimes people just say, I'm just going to not do it because I don't see the actual value proposition there. So first off, like I said, I'm planning a couple trips to Spain and to Paris later on this year. So for travel insurance, does it matter if I'm traveling internationally or domestically as far as when I'm pricing up policies? Is there a difference there in coverages and price, or is it just kind of an all-encompassing thing regardless of where I'm traveling?
No, I think you should. I mean, definitely the main focus of concern when you're traveling internationally would be addition of medical coverage. If you're traveling domestically, you don't really, for most people, they don't care about the medical, right? Whatever they have at home likely will cover them in America. And that's something that I think is very important to note. But again, if you're doing this on your own, there's a lot more pitfalls that you could run into. It's not just the medical. Is it primary coverage? Is it secondary coverage? Which again, we can get into if you want to do that. Also, what are the limits? Which company actually really pays out? And so there's really a lot more here than just kind of, looking on your own and kind of picking a policy. But certainly if you're going internationally, there should be no price issue like you were talking about. I mean, if you just do medical and you're not concerned with trip costs, it shouldn't be more than $100, $200 at most. And we're not talking about major dollars here. What makes travel insurance expensive? That's an important question we should ask. What decides the price of travel insurance? So in most cases, there are other things here, but the main factors here are how old are you and how expensive is your trip, okay? If this is a very expensive trip and you're elderly, this is going to be super expensive. If you're young and it's an expensive trip, it will be, minorly expensive. If you don't want to protect the trip costs, let's say you say, look, I'm going to Spain and all this stuff, like you said, and I have 10 grand on the line, but maybe I don't want to protect the 10 grand. Fine, take it off. Just do medical, meaning just put a low base there, and then just get the medical coverage, and that's not going to be expensive. Medical is peanuts. The trip cost is where the dollars for the policy really goes up because the insurance company very nervous. Let's say a guy has a $50,000 trip. If he even gets a cold with the correct policy, at least, he could have a cold and get all his money back. So insurance company is very nervous. Yeah, we'll charge him more money, but ultimately they're always going to pay you back a lot more than you gave them.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So also when people are talking about the actual cost of a trip, right? Like you said, 10,000, 50,000 into the 100,000s and more, there's like two different ways to kind of booking a trip, right? There's the refundable reservations and the non-refundable. So when you're looking at the actual cost, we're only covering the parts that are non-refundable, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Travel insurance only covers non-refundable trip costs. So if it's refundable in some way, before paying out the claim, the insurance company will ask you to see if you can get a refund. So let's say, give you an example. Let's say you went going on a tour. It's a $10,000 tour. Okay. Even if it's non-refundable, most insurance companies will still ask from the tour operator to write them a letter saying that, by the way, we haven't given money back to this guy and we're not going to give him any money back. Because they're very nervous that you're double dipping. They don't want you getting paid from the tour and then also getting paid from insurance. But if you have flights that are creditable or refundable in some way, fine, keep it off, keep that number down, because obviously the more you insure, the more expensive the policy is going to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a way, like, again, if you're spending all this money, maybe you don't need a policy that covers the entire amount because maybe some of your hotels are refundable. Maybe the flights are refundable. I use a lot of miles and points when I travel, right? And so instead of paying $1,000 a night for a hotel, I may be only spending 50,000, hotel points. So in that regard, if you're booking a trip with miles and points, a lot of my listeners do that. We're only covering the parts that are basic cash outlays, right? So even though you're spending a lot of miles and points, those aren't really covered by the travel insurance. I mean, if there's things happen like delays and injuries and stuff like that, you're going to be covered. But as far as getting your miles and points back, I don't think there's any travel insurance policies that actually cover that. Are there?
No, they don't. Any miles and points they won't cover. What they could cover is a restocking fee. So let's say you say, well, I couldn't go on my trip and, Amex or whatever is willing to put my points back on my account, but they want, let's say, a $250 restocking fee or something. That travel insurance could pay that amount of the restocking fee. But this is a very important question because we get this a lot. And when anyone calls us, we're very strict to try and get their number down. Okay, we don't want people to pay more than they have to. So we always ask these questions. Your flights, are you sure you want to include your flights? Are they refundable? Because a lot of people will throw flights in there. Let's say the trip is 80 grand, flights are 10 grand. And a lot of times they'll just throw it in and we'll stop them and say, whoa, I want to make sure that are these flights non-refundable? And then if they say yes, then fine, we'll add it. But no, you're correct. We don't want people insuring more than they have to because that's going to make their cost higher. And that's not what we're looking for.
So I think when somebody's looking at pricing, whether they're pricing online or working with somebody like yourself, it's almost like they want to be able to break down, instead of giving you like a total number, they want to break down the actual cost into different categories of like flights, hotels, tours, etc., and be able to kind of have some notes there. Is it refundable or not? And that way it can kind of help themselves make a decision. Or if they're unsure, then when they're talking to somebody like yourself, they can say, okay, here's the details of my trip, and this is how it kind of works as far as prepaid or not. And that way you can help them and guide them into finding the right policy and the right coverage amounts, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the travel insurance, they don't really differentiate whether that's a hotel cost or a flight cost or a tour cost. We just need a number, but we just want to focus on that number being non-refundable. So yeah, sometimes people will say to us, okay, we have to do some math with them. Okay, well, this is this, and whatever it adds up to. But ultimately, what we're trying to figure out is what is that dollar amount that's non-refundable? That's really all that matters. And by the way, a common question we get from people that I'll address here as well is, let's say they don't include the flights in terms of trip costs. They say, okay, my trip to Africa is $50,000, but I'm not going to include the flights because they're refundable. You still get all the benefits, okay, of trip delay and all this kind of stuff. Sometimes people think, well, if I don't include the flights, then if my flight is delayed, they're not going to help me. That is not how it works. They will help you regardless of whether you include that trip cost there, okay?
Oh, that's really good to know. Yeah, because the common sense would think that it's not included, but obviously if you don't get to Africa, it's kind of hard for you to be able to take that safari, right?
Yeah, but like I said, the insurance company doesn't differentiate between a flight or a tour. They just see a dollar amount that you've protected until they do the claim. They don't know, but it's not relevant, meaning if your trip is delayed, you still get that regardless whether you add the flights or not.
Sure. And now you mentioned talking about like insurance and medical coverage. Obviously, if you're working, you're going to have insurance through your work primarily. If you're retired and you're traveling a lot, most of the time you're going to be on Medicare. And so getting the medical benefits if you're traveling internationally or even outside of your coverage zone, like, for your medical policy here in the US is very critical, right? But also a lot of times, especially as you age, you start getting some pre-existing conditions, right? Are those excluded? If you have a pre-existing condition and it flares up while you're on a trip, are those excluded? Or like, how do you make sure that you're covered for something that is still kind of an issue for yourself?
Right. So it's a twofold question. Number one, like I said, we have access to every policy in America, right? We're not a travel insurance company with access to one policy where I can say, yeah, well, we cover this or we don't cover this. We're speaking broadly about every policy. But number one, with a good policy that we would recommend to you, as long as you buy the policy within 21 days, some are 14 days of your initial deposit date, people don't realize, like, if you put $100 on a trip, okay, even a little, any payment at all, could be $1 on a flight or a tour. Let's say you give a tour company $50 to hold your spot or whatever it is. The clock is ticking now. They don't realize that. And they think, well, I only put down $50, $100, doesn't matter. As soon as you put down any money on your trip, the clock is ticking. If you don't buy your policy within either 14 days or 21 days, depending on the right policy, your pre-existing conditions are no longer covered, okay? Now, the reason I said it's a twofold question is because what is a pre-existing condition? How do they define pre-existing condition? In your mind, you may define and say, well, I have a heart condition for the last 5 years. That means I have a pre-existing condition, not according to insurance companies. Insurance companies, for travel at least, they define it as any change in the last 90 days. So let's say someone had a heart condition for 5 years, but no change. Nothing's happening. They're fine. They didn't get new medication. Nothing was changed. Then fine. That's not considered a pre-existing condition. Okay. Pre-existing condition only means, let's say you had that heart condition and in the last 90 days, you had a flare up, you had to go to the hospital, you had a doctor issue, you changed your medication, for example. Then that is really a pre-existing medical condition. Okay. And this would apply not just to yourself or the people on your trip. It would also apply because you can, and again, assuming you have the correct policy, let's say you have an elderly grandmother or something like that. You want to get your money back for her. You could do that, even though she's not going on the trip. But again, if she has a pre-existing medical condition and you didn't buy it in the right time frame, you will not get paid. Okay, you need to make sure. So as a rule of thumb to all these people listening, as soon as you are ready to do this trip, either buy travel insurance first and then pay the trip, or pay the trip and immediately get your travel insurance. Because again, as you keep waiting, prices only keep going up and up and up. This is how all the algorithms are built of all these companies. So you got to understand that a lot of times people wait. They say, well, I know I'm going on this $10,000 trip, but I didn't book my flights yet, and I'm not sure if I'm going to stay for 3 extra days. So I'm going to do this in a month from now or 2 months from now while I figure it out. Cool, do that. But your pre-existing conditions are not covered anymore, potentially. Cancel for any reason is no longer available to you, and you've just paid a much higher price by waiting.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we're talking a lot of times here about like how much you're spending and things of that nature on say like a single trip. Like when you're looking at travel insurance, I know a lot of times there's single trips, but there's also annual plans. So how does an annual plan versus a single trip plan work when you don't know how much you're going to spend on some of these future trips that you're going to be taking throughout the year?
Right. The question I would have for you, which I'm going to answer, why do most companies in America not offer annual plans? And I'll tell you why they don't offer it. Because all annual plans that exist right now are a hot, steaming garbage. You throw them right in the trash. They're crap. They're total and utter crap. Many companies don't want to do them because they know that they're just I don't know what word to use, but they're almost like something that is dangerous for the consumer. Because people will buy an annual plan and in their mind, they think, okay, I'm now covered for the year. I can go wherever I want, do whatever I want. In many cases, those are all secondary coverage policies, okay? Which, again, let's do it now. Let's talk about that very quickly. Primary coverage means, okay, from step one, the insurance company is saying it's their obligation to pay you. That's what you think you're buying when you buy travel insurance. You think they're going to freaking pay you if you have a problem, right? Secondary coverage means the insurance company, even the best of them, will always point the finger elsewhere before paying you. They'll say, yeah, maybe we'll pay this guy, maybe we won't. Maybe someone else is more responsible for this than we are. If you have secondary coverage, you're in a world of hurt and you don't even know it, okay? All annual plans are secondary coverage. They don't make them with primary coverage. That's number one. Number two, the medical that they offer is very watered down, very weak. There's tremendous exclusions there and the numbers are very low. You should not be leaving America with less than $100,000 primary medical per person. Okay, $500,000 medical evacuation. These are base numbers that you should have. If you see a policy that told $25,000 medical, this is crap. This is going to do nothing for you. God forbid you're in a hospital one night. Okay, we do this all day. We see sickness, injury, hospitals all day here. If you work here for a week, you'll be very paranoid. Okay, you'll see what goes on in real life. You're in a hospital for 1 or 2 nights. You're getting a $50,000 bill. Okay.
Wow, that's scary, right? I mean, the average person certainly doesn't have that kind of money sitting in a bank account, to be able to cover that. And then they're going to get a surprise bill because what they thought they were covered actually isn't. So speaking of coverage, I do a lot of credit cards, and I have some of my credit cards have the trip protections or for delay and cancellation and those types of things. What's the difference between like the coverage you're going to get with your credit card versus the coverage you would get with a travel insurance policy?
Right. So it's a tough question to answer in a sense because there's thousands of credit cards, right? So I'm not an expert in every single credit card, but I'll just talk in broad general terms. Credit cards are all secondary coverage, like we just talked about. Okay. So getting paid from a credit card is very difficult. They are pretty good in terms of bag delay and like little tiny things like that. They could be good. But when you're talking about a trip cost, they typically cap at $10,000 trip cost. There's a lot of exclusions in those policies. So many covered reasons. Remember, I mentioned that in a good policy, you'll have over 30 covered reasons. They will remove many of them and maybe bring it down to 7 or 8 covered reasons. So there's tremendous exclusions there. Meaning the credit cards, when they're offering this to you, this is a bell and a whistle to get you to use a credit card. It's not real travel insurance. How could they do that without tremendous deficits? Because travel insurance, a real policy that's actually protective, has real risk for insurance companies. They can't become an insurance company and a credit card company. So they're basically taking a policy, they're watering it down tremendously. Many of them, I'll say 99% of them don't offer any medical coverage whatsoever, these credit cards. So again, in most cases, I would say if someone's serious about actually protecting their money, again, let's say that grandmother example, you have an elderly mother at home, parent at home, or whatever, and you're nervous something happens to them, and that's going to cause this is probably one of the most common things we see in terms of our claims. Credit cards don't cover that. Okay. They're going to cover, just a very small amount of covered reasons. And so we get people calling at times who really lament. They're like, even though they didn't buy a policy, they know that we're experts in this. They'll call our team. They'll say, I'm in Spain right now. I'm having this problem. And I'll say, do you have a policy with us? No, but we had our credit card, but we found out that you're experts in this and we really need help. Obviously, it's too late at that point, but they see that these credit cards are very hard to deal with. I mean, can you imagine how much paperwork and how difficult and how much fighting you have to do to actually get paid through a credit card? And many travel insurance companies as well. You get someone on the phone, you're talking to someone in the Philippines. I mean, it's very tough. Really not to promote ourselves, but really without our guidance and our assistance and the power that we bring, which again, you don't pay a penny more for, you could be in a lot of trouble and also not really know what to do. And we do all of that, like I said, at the same price. So that's why our company's growing so quickly. And we've been as successful as we are because there's a massive Grand Canyon hole size hole here in the market. And what we do is very necessary.
No, absolutely. Like I have one of my clients, for example, they were up there skiing in Utah and they had an issue where, the wife got injured so much that she couldn't actually fly back to LA and she was in the hospital. They actually lost their whole ski trip, right? Their lift tickets and their resort that they're staying at and everything else. And the husband is staying at a hotel near the hospital, basically helping take care of his wife, right? So in a scenario like that, travel insurance would kind of reimburse those expenses that they lost out on, right, due to the injury. They could help out with some of the medical expenses if they have a medical coverage. But would that policy coverage also help them cover the expenses of him staying at a hotel near the hospital as well? Or how does that work?
Well, number one, we have to backtrack because many policies won't cover you in a skiing accident because if that's deemed something that is dangerous, they may not cover you. So it's important that you get a specific policy just geared towards skiing, which obviously we have because we have access to everything. And so if we know you're going, we do a ton of ski tours that use our services. We would make sure that you had a skiing specific policy, which means that would not be excluded, right? Skiing is in the policy and many of them you have to actually write in what activities you're doing to make sure it's covered. Or with other coverages, it's an upgrade to extreme and adventure protection or whatever it is. But the point is, if you buy a standard policy for skiing, I would venture to guess, again, there's a million policies in America, but I would venture to guess you are not covered for skiing. So point is, A, get the right policy. Assuming you have the right policy, then all the things you're talking about, yes, you would be protected for. You would have, even if you needed to be medically evacuated off the slope, they would do that. They would give you all your money back, which is called trip interruption, because that happened during your trip. And due to trip interruption, they would also help pay for also trip delay. And you would have some hotels that they could pay you for, transportation expenses, medical bills. But totally, yeah, no, 100%. Very dangerous, these things. To me, honestly, I never went skiing. I'm from Canada. I grew up in Toronto. I never went skiing once in my life because to me, it looks like so dangerous. I don't know. I'm scared of skiing. Everyone I know who's gone skiing has everything broken. And I'm like, I'm scared of that, honestly. But point is, yeah, you would need to get the right policy. If you're going on skiing and you're listening to this, really very important you do your research here, or obviously call us. You don't have to do any research.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things, we're all busy. We got our family, we got work, we got our extracurricular activities and everything like that. For somebody to sit down and evaluate all the different policies and the nuances and the exclusions and everything like that, I mean, that's like a second time job, like a second job, right? Trying to figure all that. And like you said, working with an expert like yourself, you can do all that and without paying anything extra and have your expertise basically for free versus trying to figure it out on your own. And I always look for value, and I look at it as if I could get expert advice for free without paying anything additional versus what I'd already be paying if I did it all myself, why would I not use an expert?
That's what I'm saying. That's why we're here.
So one of the things that I have like in my kind of my arsenal of like, travel tools and everything, I have a policy through a company called MedJet, right? And I know that they're not actual travel insurance. They're more like an evacuation and that type of policy. So how does that work with, let's say, a travel policy? Is that like a good complement to that, or a good alternative, or is it something that maybe it's not worth the premium that you're paying?
Right. So if you're going to travel with a travel insurance policy, then typically something like MedJet wouldn't really be that necessary, because most policies that at least that we would recommend, they're all going to have medical evacuation. All MedJet does is they're a medical evacuation company. They don't do anything but medical evacuation. Okay. Medical evacuation, they will be a little potentially more lenient with what they'll medically evacuate. Meaning normally medical evacuation is limited to life and death type of experiences, a life-threatening injury or something very dangerous that you would really need to be medically evacuated. MedJet could be more lenient about that, and maybe they will take someone with a broken leg, let's say, and medically evacuate them. Although that may not be, necessary. But in most cases, if you get the correct policy, MedJet is kind of irrelevant. That would be my take on it, even though I know some people there. They're great people. They actually are a really good company for what they do. I think they kind of like are going after people that, maybe aren't super well versed in travel insurance. Because if you're going to have a policy that has medical evacuation in it, then it would kind of mean that you don't need MedJet anymore.
Sure. So I think that's one of those things, again, where if you are looking at the policies by yourself online, you may not know that what it is covering, and also what your policy that you're purchasing is excluding or actually covered. And again, like, you don't want to pay double for the same type of coverage, because we're all trying to reduce our costs and not spend extra money that we don't need to, right?
Well, it's more than that. You could take it further than that. In certain cases, when insurance companies find out that there are other insurance companies involved, they both won't pay you. They'll both point the finger at each other. And they'll say, well, you're here. Why don't you pay it? And the guys go, well, you're here too. So why don't you pay it? And then you can go back and forth. So sometimes people like to buy more things because they think it's better. In the world of travel insurance, oftentimes it's actually harming you.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It basically overcomplicates things. And maybe you're stuck and you have to go to court and everything like that to try to get somebody to pay for it. And in the meantime, you're on the hook for that expense and you have to come out of pocket to pay for it, and then having to go after one of them to actually get them to pay you back.
Like sometimes on these claim documents, when you file a claim, it's one of these like hidden questions that, we would never answer in the affirmative, but forms will say, do you have any other insurance that may pay for this claim? And you always say, hell no, you're paying. But some people who do it on their own, they don't know what they're doing. They're like, yeah, we have MedJet involved. And like, oh, great. And now you're in the world of problems. You don't even know how you got into it. But like I said, we don't just sell you a policy and disappear, right? We do claims. We do everything from start to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, like if you do run into a situation where you are like you having to file a claim, if you're buying it on your own, you're going through one of these sites, either buying it directly or through like a kind of like that Expedia like type of site where it does a comparison among a bunch of different other policies. When you have to file a claim, you're having to navigate that entire process yourself and trying to figure it out and what's the right paperwork and what's the right form and everything like that. Versus if they're working with a concierge like yourself, you're going to be there to kind of help hold their hand and walk them through the entire process, right?
Right. You know what actually happens in many cases? It's terrible that they do this, but these travel insurance companies purposefully make it vague. They're purposely not clear with what they want from you. And you, as a regular traveler who is not an expert in travel insurance, you don't even know what the process is supposed to be. So you're kind of like thinking, well, I assume they're going to want to see this. I assume they're going to want to see that, but you don't even know. And they've been very vague with you with what they want because they're trying to kick the ball down the field endlessly and to make this take forever and then come back to you. We need another document. Come back to you. We need another document, right? So what we do is we actually have dedicated claims analysts at many of these companies who are dedicated just to our travelers, okay? So we get priority treatment, but our team here will start the claim on your behalf. We go with you, literally line by line, exactly what you need to provide. And then you put it together because I don't have, we don't have access to your bank accounts and all that, right? So you put it together, send it to us. Our team will look it over, make sure it looks good. And then we'll make sure we send it to the head of the claims department, our dedicated claims analyst. And then in many cases, within 7 to 14 days, you're going to get paid, okay? Which is unheard of in the world of travel insurance. Many people waiting 6 months to get paid, okay? So very different, the experience with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like one of the key things there is when I used to work at a bank, we're working with our clients and like submitting loan applications and everything like that. One of the things that always trips everything up, whether it's a loan application or a claim for like travel insurance or any type of insurance, is not providing complete information or missing a box that you need to check. Time is on their side. They will hold it up for as long as possible because they're holding on to their money right now, right? They want to hold off on paying for as long as they can. And if they can reject your paperwork because you didn't fill out something correctly, because the average person like me or anybody who's listening, we don't fill out these forms on a regular basis. So we don't know what they're saying, right? And so anything they can do to reject it, they absolutely will. And having that second set of eyes, like one of your people, to make sure that the claim is filled out correctly, the package is full and complete before it gets submitted, is absolutely essential as far as getting your claim processed in a timely manner.
Right. But another point to that, to add to what you're saying, because it's correct, is what is their motivation to pay you? You're nothing. You're faceless nothing. And you don't realize that you're a faceless nothing, but you are. To them, you are literally nothing. However, we bring millions of dollars to these companies. So if you're not going to take care of our client, it's a big problem, right? And we can call the CEOs of these companies. So that's why it's always beneficial to have an expert on your side to help you with these things. That's the real point. Power talks. Power really does talk. I personally met with, there's a company called Faye, F-A-Y-E. They're a travel insurance technology company. Really amazing company, actually. Very progressive. You should look them up even while we're talking because they have an app. And in their app, there's a virtual credit card. And they are using not only their own team, but artificial intelligence to say, hey, your trip was delayed. We see it was delayed. We know it fulfills the covered reasons in the policy, and they can hit you immediately with cash. So I personally I had dinner with the CEO, and we were talking about all this kind of stuff. And we even talked about the power that we bring. And I was even pushing him to say, you understand that any of our clients, we all get priority, even though we do anyway. But he was like, oh, for sure. I just want to hear him. I want it to come out of his mouth. He's 100%. He's like, any travel defend client, you guys are going to get priority. And this is the relationships we foster, right? We're spending all day on this. So just something that is, people should understand that when you buy on your own, no matter how big the policy is, doesn't matter. Ultimately, you are faceless nothing. That's just the truth of it.
For sure. And I think the main thing is us as listeners and travelers, the policy that we pay, like that premium, might be pretty substantial to us, right? Like it's a big dollar amount, whether it's like hundreds or thousands of dollars for the actual travel insurance. Although that may be a big sum to us, it's a rounding error to these insurance companies, right? And so, like you said, having the economies of scale and that larger purchasing power that you guys have, make sure that you guys are heard. Versus if I just buy my policy directly, they may not hear me because I'm a rounding error and they don't even really care whether I come back or not. Well, Ben, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all these amazing tips about travel insurance. I've learned so much. You've opened my eyes to a lot of things here. If somebody has questions about travel insurance or how to work with a concierge service like yourself, what's the best way to reach you on social media?
So social media wise, really, it's for us, it's just about LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really where we are powerful. You can look up myself, just Ben Camille, Travel Defend on LinkedIn. For most people wanting to purchase a policy, there's two ways you can do it, or at least to talk to our team. You don't have to buy anything. 1-800-578-2871. Again, 1-800-578-2871. That's the heavy lifting of our business because we just do so many calls, and it's really trying to not only help the clients figure out what the best policy is for them, do the paperwork, and take care of them. You can also buy on our website where we have the quote optimizer, where basically it's artificially intelligence based. And based on the information you give it, we'll give you the one or two best options for your situation that exist in America. Rather than giving you hundreds of options, based on what we taught it, it will give you the one or two best options for your situation. So we do a lot of business just direct through the site. But we're here, man. Anyone wants to talk or needs help, needs real personalized concierge service, that's what we're all about.
No, absolutely. Like you said, it's great that you whittle it down to just a couple options, because if you return somebody 10, 15, 20 options, it's that overwhelm is going to happen. And it's just easy to put it off and go, oh, I'll take a look at this later. And next thing you know, like you said, you've surpassed your exclusion periods for pre-existing conditions. You're not able to get full coverage, like cancellation for any reason, and those type of coverage benefits. So the best thing is just give you guys a call. Are you guys open 24 hours a day, or is it just business hours? How does that work?
Right. So I'll get into that. I just want to mention traveldefend.com. And so we're defending you. So it's traveldefend.com, no hyphens, nothing like that. That's how you would reach us. In terms of 24 hours, our sales office is not 24 hours. However, it's good you mentioned this. We set up a WhatsApp with all of our clients that will work anywhere in the world, and it is monitored by our team 24 hours a day. So let's say you're in Spain, someone has a broken leg or whatever it is, they don't know what to do, they're stuck. You reach out to our team 24 hours a day via that WhatsApp. If you don't have WhatsApp, usually we'll set it up with you when we do your policy. You can reach out and our team will guide you and will help you. Okay. We have even the personal CEO of these 24-hour assist companies, because all travel insurance companies, they hire a third party 24-hour assist company for emergencies. We have all the phone numbers of CEOs of these companies. They give priority to all of our clients as well. And so point is, you're right. Good question. Use the WhatsApp, reach out to us 24 hours a day and our team will help you.
No, that's great, because again, if we're traveling to like Asia or to Europe or Africa or anything like that, although it may be daytime where we are, it might be nighttime here in the US, right? And so having access to that 24/7 customer service is fantastic. Ben, again, I really appreciate your time. We'll include links to traveldefend.com in the website. That way, everybody is easy for them to find it. It was great talking to you, and we look forward to seeing you when we travel there.
Thank you, man. Have a great one.
Wow, I learned so much about travel insurance from this conversation with Ben. I always thought that my credit card benefits would protect me, but now I know there's some gaps in those coverages that could lead to a nasty surprise. You can find all the links we talked about today at wetravelthere.com/travel insurance. We want to say thank you to AwardWallet for being today's affiliate partner. It's my favorite way to track airline miles, hotel points, and other loyalty programs. Go to wetravelthere.com/AwardWallet to start your free account today. Join us next time as we talk to another local expert about the best things to do, see, eat, and drink in their city. We hope you join us when we travel there. I love hearing your feedback about the show. Send me an email at wetravelthere.com/contact to share your thoughts. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends and tell me what you like most. Make sure you follow us on your favorite podcast app. That way you won't miss any of our upcoming destinations.